I Am the Law, How Judge Dredd Predicted Our Future. An in-depth examination in the ways in which the comic strip Judge Dredd, published in 2000 AD, has predicted the changing face of policing in Britain over the past 45 years. Judge, jury, and executioner. Dredd is the brutal comic book cop policing the chaotic future urban jungle of Mega City 1. Absolutely brilliant. I was a huge fan. Delighted to say that joining me live on the line from somewhere in a mega city, it wouldn't surprise me, is the man who's behind the book, Michael Molcher. I hope I'm getting the name right. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Yeah, I did the depths of Oxford City 1.
Oh, Oxford City 1.
Truly dystopian.
Well, yes. Now, for those, you see, if you're like me and you're a child of the 70s, 2000 AD was just basically it. We were just talking about Rogue Trooper, Judge Dredd, I can't remember the name of the robots as well.
ABC Warriors.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nemesis the Warlock, Halo Jones,
Strontium Dog, all that lot, and we would wait every week because it was the brilliant art. It was the brilliant artwork, but more so than that were the concepts behind them.
Very much so, and even today, 2080 is this wonderful kind of smorgasbord of ideas and imagination, and as you say, artwork. So it's, I look back at the stuff I was reading as a kid, in the little kind of floppy collections you get. This was kind of the age before graphic novels and all this thing. And just, it blew my mind. And, the people involved, John Wagner, Alan Moore, Carlos Escala, Kevin O'Neill, Pat Mills, these are the people who permanently rewired my brain as like a 10-year-old. Yeah.
And if you're wondering why we're all of that sort of generation are the way we are, I mean, some pretty adult themes and some pretty graphic stuff. I mean, this is before graphic novel. This is before, this is before we get, 300 and the Spartans and all that and all the Batman stuff. I mean, this was dark before Nolan had discovered his HB pencil.
There's so many moments, particularly in kind of like 1981, 1982, as you say, before the kind of mature adult graphic novel came along, where you're getting in Judge Dredd, you're getting people jumping off of buildings, you're getting people flattened. There's a deep vein of ironic black humor running all the way through.
Judge Death. I mean, come on, for an 8-year-old, Judge Death is quite something.
The coolest villain in comics, to be quite frank. You cannot kill what does not live. Life is a crime, so therefore life itself shall be a crime. All crime is committed by the living, so therefore all life shall be a crime.
Yeah.
Just incredible concepts.
Yeah, those who were reading Jackie and the Beano in my school were in for a rude awakening, methinks, when they came across that. So. So for those who aren't members of the Church of Dredd, and we might just touch briefly on the films, but explain the rationale behind, because we've been wittering on like the fanboys that we are for the last 5 minutes. So let's talk us through Mega City, because. Here we go, fanboy again. But it is, mega cities, megatropolises. I mean, that's the whole east side of the States for a start, if not Tokyo, if not now, the large swathes of London. So who or what is Dredd?
So Dredd is a future mega cop. He's someone who enforces the law in a city where due process doesn't really exist, where democracy has been overthrown, and everything is run by the judges, who are these policemen empowered with the ability to restrain, kill, and sentence, give extreme sentences to people. And they are, as the parlance goes, Judge Dredd and Executioner. Judge, jury, and executioner all rolled into one. Dredd particularly is a wonderful synthesis of the anxieties of the late 1970s. So, the bubbling urban cauldron, the inability of liberal democracy to deal with the manifold crises, the economic, social, political, And the strip is this incredible melange of all these different ideas of particularly John Wagner and who's the co-creator, and his writing partner Alan Grant, just taking the headlines of the day and exaggerating them to breaking point and then making a joke out of them. And he does black humor, he does horror, he does pathos, he does war stories, he does westerns, he does, he is one of the most versatile and one of the greatest comic book characters in the world. And so it's not a surprise that we've had our brains warped by this stuff.
Yeah, and also he's not Roy Rogers, is he? He's not some sort of upholder of the law. It's very ambiguous with Judge Dredd.
Yeah, there's a wonderful contradiction in him. I talk about this in the book, that he is he's a brave man who does good things, but he upholds a totalitarian fascistic police state, and will not hesitate to whack someone around the head or to shoot somebody if they are breaking the law. And it challenges an awful lot of our assumptions about what the police are, what the law means, what it means to live in a state where law and order politics, which is what came up in the 1970s, is now everything, where everything is policing. I say in the book that the judges cover everything from welfare to warfare.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at what the time it's coming out in the late 70s, I mean, there is the change, isn't there? There is the change from that sort of softly Britt Dixon, Doc Green, but we've got the riots in Brixton, we've got the riots in Toxteth, we've got social upheaval, we've got the National Front, we've got the Anti-Nazi League. There's all sorts of stuff kicking off there, and people are for the first time, because the generation has moved away from that Second World War, everything being in order, in place, and there are questions are being asked. Do we go down that US style of policing, which, because obviously the mega cities are supposed to, I mean, I know it's a British comic, but you kind of feel that Judge Dredd is going to be speaking with an American accent.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, but the important thing about the strip is, although it's set in America, Britain, particularly comics, has always used the bigness of America in order to talk about home. It is the extreme place where everything is big, or everything is more extreme. So it's always about here rather than there. And certainly in the 1970s, particularly kind of the middle classes, the political class, was beginning to see how the police weren't Dixon of Dock Green, that was a myth, that was a post-war myth, and actually the police, if you were on the receiving end of their attention, had always been this way. So you then get a character like Judge Dredd, who inverts the vigilante cop. So you get Dirty Harry in the 1970s. You get the Sweeney, all these cops, bend the rules to do what's right. But Dredd is that turned on its head. And it's my favorite line in the book, where it says that, Dredd wasn't a vigilante cop. He wasn't the individual who was tired of the ineffective state. He was the tired state, the state that was tired of the ineffective individual. So, he is the representative of the state squashing the individual in this hellscape, crowded hellscape of Megacity 1.
Yeah, because there's not, as you said, it's this almost fascistic state, isn't there? Because, the state he's protecting. And so he is, you'd say he's got PSTD, wouldn't you, if we were doing it from now? Because he's just seen so much. And again, there is no deviation. I am the law. There is no deviation from that law. And okay, the characters that he fights, and some of the villains are absolutely brilliantly drawn and out there. And you have to wonder what exactly they've been imbibing before they sat down in front of the old-fashioned, pen and pencil drawing board. But there isn't a lot of redemption. There isn't a lot of light. You don't see him at the end, sort of walking slowly in slow-mo in a floaty dress full of flowers, for fields of tulips, do you?
Well, that's what's so wonderful about Dredd, really, is that when he does try to change, when he tries to change himself, when he tries to change the system, he breaks it, because power is brittle. And so when you have a system like this, which is entirely based around coercion, about force, around about violence, as soon as it tries to be more compassionate, the house of cards falls down. So there's this wonderful moment from, I think, about 2007, where he stands in front of the council of judges who run the city, and he says, how much misery do we have the right to impose? And it's just one of these kind of light bulb moments where you look at it, you go, I've cheered this guy on. He seems to do what's right. We have the luxury of seeing him do the right thing in certain situations. But actually, how much is it a situation of their making? How much is the violence not solving because the judges don't solve crime. Mega City 1 is still really crime. It's still really crime ridden. So it's this wonderful kind of treatise on the law and order politics, right wing politics, that focuses on violence and how ineffectual it is and how it can't change. It can't solve the problems it claims to be the solution to.
And when you look at the gear he's got, because, I mean, the bike aside, and my goodness, what a machine that is. The wide tyres on his motorcycle. Yeah. But if you look at the helmet and the visor and some of the stuff he employs, the sprays, etc. It is a look forward into the future, because here we are 40 years later, and the visor and the helmet and the sprays are all pretty much part of common policing.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult not to look at Judge Dredd and think, well, some people have been using it as a manual rather than a warning. The wonderful thing about what John Wagner and Alan Grant especially did with the stories in the 1980s was that they were able to see right through to the sinews of this law and order politics and just be able to exaggerate and in doing so, predict it. There's a quote at the very beginning of the book from Ed Neumeier, who did RoboCop. It says, if you want to predict the future, think how bad things could be and then make a joke out of it. And that's basically what Judge Dredd is. It's this awful black joke about, isn't this awful? But here's just how awful it could be. And it manages to do that in a comic book that was intended for kids. So, it's just amazing stuff.
I just like to see, because I mean, if you're not aware, I mean, just going back to that, not only 2000 AD, but you've got sort of, Warlord as well at the same time, all those war comics as well, extremely violent. But 2000 AD was the one that really sort of, if you like, turned us on. How do you make an argument though in the book? Because it'd be very easy to go, well, Judge Dredd sees the future, therefore all police are semi-fascist, etc., which is a bit of a facile argument. So how did you put this down in a sort of coherent narrative?
Well, each chapter takes a Judge Dredd story and looks at how within that story it says something about policing over the last 45, 50 years, says something about the politics, says something about our economic life, our political life, and teases out from there the radical thinking behind concepts such as necropolitics, of the kind of the abolitionist thinking around policing and things like that, and looks at how Dredd, as a strip, understands that and actually tells us something about the journey that as a society we've been on for the last 50 years. Because ultimately, Dredd is an anti kind of law and order politics, anti right wing figure, but by making it ambiguous, by making you root for the bad guy, effectively, it asks you to examine your own thoughts, your own prejudices, the way that you see the world. And, absolutely, you can take him just as a straightforward, like action cop, and plenty of people do. But I think those who truly get Dredd look at him and go, actually, this is complicated and I have complicated feelings about it.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can just take it on face value, but then again, you're missing out on so much. I mean, the high rises in the mega cities, and not only that, the surveillance. And again, this is before CCTV. So you look at that, and then you look at the way that the mega cities operate, and you go, blimey, that's spot on.
Yeah. Well, the first page of Judge Dredd has a big kind of camera in the foreground that says police scanner or police camera, something like that. And like the first traffic camera had only been deployed on Britain's roads maybe like 3 or 4 years before. So, this is very present. Surveillance is baked into the beginning. We're now one of the most surveilled states in the world. London has something ridiculous like a CCTV camera for every 30 people. So, they understood the suspicion that's baked into the kind of police state. and the kind of law and order politics in that it is a politics, and we see this very much over the last few years, that is inherently suspicious of its people. You've also got crackdowns on protests, on being able to withdraw consent from a system that claims it has the consent of the people. The dreads thing is always very much, well, you may not like me, but you can't fault me. Of course we can, because look at how miserable all these people are who live in your failed state. And look at the body count. It's not a Judge Dredd story unless there's a pile of bodies. And in effect, it's the kind of politics that has failed all those people. And we look at our own failing politics and the people that it's abandoning as to their fate effectively, and think, well, this strip was incredibly predictive about how the world would end up.
And it's predicting, okay, it's, the various strata of society. And hey, who'd have thunk that, with people, because there's very much an underclass who always are demonized in dread and always end up getting the rough end of his boot, if they're lucky. And also, as I said before, reactive policing rather than proactive. You don't see, Judge Dredd at some sort of pride festival in Mega City 1 or whatever. It is always reacting to an event rather than, we don't see Judge Dredd going
Yeah, and ultimately, I think what Dredd does, and what I examine in the book, is it exposes the hypocrisy of the notion of progressive policing. The idea that the police can disturb and go, actually, with the good guys, it's go, okay, well then we won't do exactly what you want, and you'll be back cracking our heads. So, policing is policing, regardless of the pin badge it wears on its lapel. So it has been fascinating looking at the last, I started writing the book, during lockdown, at the time of all the Black Lives Matter protests, because I think that was such a critical moment. A character like this that could be so easily assumed is propaganda.
Yeah,
is actually a searing satire.
And also, if you look at some of the weird and wonderful hairstyles and fashion senses that are in 2000 AD, they have come to pass. I mean, say what you like about, I do phone-in shows, and trust me, people say what they like about gender fluid, trans, LBGT, whatever, or the right of expression, which is another trope. And you see all these wild and wonderful creatures, and I mean creatures in 2000 AD and Judge Dredd. But, some of the outfits that you see at a protest in the streets of London now wouldn't look too far out of place in the streets of or on the pages of 2000 AD.
It wouldn't, and I think the thing that often gets overlooked with the weird and wacky world of Mega City 1 is that it's a reaction to their environment. These are people who live in a pressure cooker environment. They live in these tiny apartments in a very crowded city. They're denied democratic voice. They're denied any real kind of self-expression, and so they turn to these fads to in their case, to fill their lives. And I think one of the things that Dredd as a strip has been quite prescient about is the state's reaction to those who are merely seeking the right to self-expression. And and the state and society, bear in mind that the Dredd came out almost simultaneously with the mainstream rise of punk.
Yeah,
it was not even 6 months since the Sex Pistols were on TV, swearing will. So there's always going to be that backlash against anything that's out of the ordinary. And what Dredd as a strip, I think, does is it shows the hollowness and the authoritarian bent of reactions to anything that's a bit different.
So, how important? I mean, what conclusions on your journey, Michael? On your journey through Dredd, I mean, can we? Because people say, "Oh, it's a comic," but it isn't. It's an art form. I still vividly remember Dredd, and that is 45 years later. I can still remember some of the storylines and some of the amazing. If nothing else, the draftmanship is amazing. And every movie from Blade Runner to The Fifth Element to High Rise takes Judge Dredd, Megacities as their inspiration. No, absolutely no qualms about that one. So, what can people perhaps have a think about if they look at I Am the Law?
Well, one of the things that came out of the book was really that resistance and dissent is not just important in this moment. It's such an important part of just our society, of our democracy, and the kind of self-defeating law and order politics, the increasingly right-wing, authoritarian Home Secretaries that we have, to fall for their rhetoric, to go, well, actually, maybe everyone should behave themselves. It's all right to be talking about somebody else whose behavior you don't particularly like, but eventually that kind of politics will come for you as well. So, you talk about the underclass in Megacity 1. Most people in Megacity 1 are the underclass because, they are people whom the police, the judges, pay attention to. And so it's very easy to sit in a cozy life and think, well, actually, the police will never come for me. Well, lots of people thought that over the years. And so that's the journey I've been on with this book, is to try and bust some of the myths about Judge Dredd and about British comics, but also bust some myths about policing and using Judge Dredd to do that.
And the films. Stay clear.
And the films.
And the films should. What are your thoughts on the films, Michael? Because we had Stallone in the first one, which got roundly panned. And was it Dougray Scott in the second one?
No, it's Carl Urban.
Thank you. Yeah.
In the second one, lovely chap. The second one's great, light on the satire, but great action film. And I think really, again, it was actually a movie that you can either enjoy it as a straightforward action movie, which many people do, but then you can also go, well, this is fairly horrific.
Welcome to my world. Yes.
Yeah. All of these people in this situation are products of their environment, and that includes Dredd as well. So, the environment is horrible. So it's producing, it's brutalizing people, and they're reacting in certain ways. So, I think actually there is a deep message hidden, quite well in that movie, but I think it's a great expression of the ideas behind the comic, and ultimately, as someone who has once worn a replica Judge Dredd outfit, like a comic realistic one,
right?
You can't fight in those. There's a whopping big eagle on your shoulder.
Okay, can you just actually, before I start getting calls in what circumstance were you wearing the full outfit?
So, my day job is that I do marketing and publicity for 2000 AD,
right?
And Dredd. And the first year we went to San Diego Comic-Con, which is the huge Comic-Con in America.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, we just licensed a company called Planet Replicas to do replica costumes, and I thought it would be a great advert if I wore one. And one of the comic geek sites used to do this is the first day at Comic-Con kind of photo gallery.
Yeah,
and they put up a photo of me, and I was very proud, and I put it up online. And the first comment underneath was, "Since when did Judge Dredd get fat?"
Oh, that's Galaxy Quest all over, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, I wasn't happy about that, so I've never done it again. Don't worry about that.
I'm extremely. My inner geek has come roaring to the surface. You just said the Comic-Con in San Diego. That is the holy grail for all science fiction. If people want to go, and I advise you should go raring off to your nearest 2000 AD forum, or whatever. Where can they find you, Michael?
They can find me online. My surname is Molcher, Molcher. I squatted on all of the social media accounts with that one. But also, I do the 2000. If you want to find more about 2000 AD and the people behind it, there's the 2000 AD Thrillcast, which is our podcast, which you can find on 2000AD.com. And I'm the Law is available from all good book and comic book retailers.
And just quickly, because we said it's just a bunch. This is just a sad 50-something man going on about this stuff. Yeah. But 2000 AD is in really. Obviously, you've got the dream job. And I'm extremely jealous, but it's in really good health. People people say, oh well, the internet's going to kill comics, the whole thing. But if anything, it's absolutely put a rocket under the brand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. 2000 AD is still published every week. We have the Judge Dredd magazine every month, and as a fan, as a lifelong fan, that's always something that I take enormous amount of pride in. Not just that I work for it, but that we're still maintaining this tradition. And I would make the possibly controversial statement that it's as good as ever.
marvelous, and I can't wait for the Rogue Trooper film to come out. I didn't know that was coming, so I'm getting very excited about that indeed. It'll take me back to being a 10-year-old in Stoke-on-Trent one more time. This book is called I Am the Law, How Judge Dredd Predicted Our Future. It's going to be available as a virtual download from our own virtual bookstore. It's by Michael Molcher, who we've been speaking to today. Michael, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you this morning.
Absolutely. It's been a joy.